Hi, Paul. This season, from a fan's perspective, seems to offer a pretty unique variety of spectacles. You've got St. Louis and Arizona playing essentially a 7-game series, right in the middle of the regular season. You've got Vegas and Colorado playing 4 times in a row, including a game at an exotic location. You've got teams returning from 12-day layoffs and so on. If you're a hockey fan, let's say whose team is not playing on a given night, and you're trying to decide which game to watch, how would you go about doing that?
I always pick, so in a normal year, well, let me rephrase that. This year, you're almost totally into your own division. There's usually a game on. And then I've always picked anybody on a run, anybody that's, winning or scoring an awful lot, or their goaltender's been really hot. And then there's some analytics stuff too, they're kind of watching a team who's not giving up any passes to the slot right now. So I'll watch them play a fair amount. So for me, I'm looking for something that's unique, that's happening in the NHL at that time. So I'm either looking to steal something or monitor something. And then when it's just as a fan, I'm probably going to watch the game that I think has the most goals in it.
We'll go next to Ted Wyman from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Ted.
Hi, Paul. Well, 3 games back for Tucker Pullman, a little bit more minutes each game.
Yeah.
Do you think he's getting close to where he left off? And is he doing a good job of recovering from what he's been through?
Yeah, I thought that the back half of that game, especially the third period, he looked, right to peak form. Tucker was one of our best performers in the bubble, and he was really good in the back half of last year. So I felt that in the game exactly. I know that he was struggling in the first 2. Like his shifts were very, very short. He's trying to play at a high level. So we're hopeful that was a starting point for tonight's game, because he looked right on. And as soon as that happened, I think he and Josh started to be really effective. And then it takes quite a bit of pressure off Charlie Huddy in terms of making sure that Forbert and Pionk are on the ice when their dangerous players are out there. So it just, really important to our team that he's able to build where he's at and keep going.
And we'll go next to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
Afternoon, Paul. Just sticking with Tucker, what's made him an effective penalty killer at this level?
You know what? So he didn't early on last year, and he came in, and we haven't rolled him really back into it yet. But range, for one. So when our penalty kill, when you look at when he kind of came off his injury last year, and our penalty kill ran 4th from January 1st to March 11th, and then I think 2nd from February 1st, that's when he came into killing penalties for us. And a big reason we felt was our stands at the line. So it wasn't just in zone, but our ability to disrupt off that original entry. He's a big man that covers a lot of ice, and he skates very well. So even pucks that are chipped to the corner, he could get to, and we could at the very least contest those and disrupt their team from getting into their structure. So I would say range and speed are the real primary thing that he does well. He's not afraid to block shots, which is a part of that job, and he's got a good stick.
We'll go next to Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, when you first started coaching in this league, it was, considered the good old days, I guess you will. And this is the new NHL as we get into kind of more speed. Players are different in their development. I bring that up because I want to talk about a guy like Paul Stastny, who's kind of from the good old days where, hockey doesn't, own his life, but at the same time, he's very committed to his craft. And I just wanted to, from your perspective, what you've appreciated about a guy like Paul Stastny on the ice, but also off the ice as well.
Yeah. So the player, if we're going to reach back into the old days, I mean, the game really changed drastically in 2006. But prior to that, Paul Stastny would remind me very much of Ron Francis, right? Not necessarily the fastest guy on the ice, but exceptionally gifted in reading the play. Very, very good hands. But he's a player that, and this was true of Ronnie as well. You never manage this guy's game because he's, and what I'm talking about is with the puck. So his decision-making on when there's something and when there's not is as good as there is in the league. So you'll see pucks just easily get chipped out. You're never looking at a bunch of games and saying, the guy's, there's too much risk in his game. He's turning the puck over. If there's a play to be made, he makes it every single time. But there's very little risk in his game. So he's got that. he's got that intelligence that's just kind of off the charts. And part of that, neither he nor Ronnie would, as I said, were the fastest guy in the ice, but their positioning was so good it was never really an issue, right? They would put themselves in places on the ice that they didn't have to chase from. They could anticipate where the play was going. So they've got this really high level hockey IQ, and their personalities, kind of the off the ice. They were always, both those guys, like team first, team win first, right? This is not about points. It's not about my next contract. That doesn't, and then a love of the game. Like Paul will sit and talk hockey with you for 3 hours and enjoy every minute of it. He has this really strong kind of passion for the game. I think that's all the same brain, right? The guy that can sit on the bench and watch the game and understand the flow of it. An example would be the first time that I met Ron Francis. We're from the same hometown. We went to the same high school. He's a couple of years older than me. And then I met him in Carolina when we had signed him. And they had just finished in Pittsburgh, I believe, losing to Montreal in a playoff series. So I watched that series very, very closely. And when we sat down to talk about it, he had 10 more things that I hadn't even seen, right? Like adjustments his coach made, adjustments the other coach made. The IQ was off the charts. And at the end of it, it's born. You have to have the capacity, the brain, the intelligence to do that, but you also have a tremendous passion for the game that you're so wired into it that you pick up all those little nuances.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Paul. We were talking in Edmonton. Dave Tippett was actually talking about this as well. He was pretty happy with the way his team played, but he was really looking for better ways to defend, especially on those deflection goals. You talked about the one by Brady Tkachuk the other day. If you're not allowed to cross-check the guy as a defenseman or maul him, speaking of the good old days, to defend that better, is the onus on the defenseman, or do you have to even put more of a premium on the forwards coming out to cut off even more lanes and have more shot blocks?
Right. So you want to consider then how you're directing that shooter at the blue line, possibly a more of an inside out route. We never liked that too much because the body's almost outside the shot lane then. And then you'd be shooting kind of off, getting him to shoot slightly more toward the post than giving him necessarily the middle net. Early detection of that slot player is the most important thing. The two guys, and somebody who's got, I haven't looked at this in a probably since the summer, but I think the two best shot tip players in the NHL would be Joe Pavelski and Chris Kreider. And why they're so good at, in my mind, is they move to it. So it's a moving tip, right? They'll come out of the corner, find the slot, and they'll actually be moving toward the defenseman, which, that motion makes them harder to check. They're harder to find. And then when you get on, especially if you think of it just from a body position point of view, if the tipper is facing the shooter, right, the stick is out front. So your options are to get in front. And that's another one. If you can put enough pressure on that D-man that shot tip isn't coming with a lot of heat, then we have to think about stepping up and fronting it. And that happened 3 times in our last game. Mark Scheifele did a really good job of it in the third period, stepping out in front of one. That's the other option. But we've got to get those sticks picked up. They're going to try to do the same thing. So there's also a positive in this, right? So it's usually going to be a defenseman on that, not always, but a defenseman maybe stepping out into that shot to the pin, which means there's less traffic at the net. So you'll see teams then just start pounding pucks at the net and trying to go one-on-one net front with the guy that's there.
We'll go next to Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Afternoon, Paul. I'll just ask the obligatory lineup question.
Yeah.
And since we don't see skate, exact same lineup as the other night.
Correct.
Any update on Pierre-Luc and Nate in terms of whether they skated today or that sort of thing?
So all of them skated today. I think Nate's very, very close to playing. I think because we had not so much a good result. I like the way our fourth line played. It kind of buys Nate a few more days to really push himself here. Pierre-Luc skated. He's feeling better. And again, I'm kind of want to make sure we're only going to deal with this once. So we'll be, cautious before he comes back. We're certainly not going to want him to play significantly injured. We want him to get him pretty close to healthy before he goes back in.
We'll go next to Sarah Oleski from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, turn on this video. Paul, one of the things that Andrew Kopp had said just about how the Jets could have success against the Oilers would be puck possession when playing your style of game. In your mind, is that what you would like to see from your team tonight, so that you don't maybe get into the track meet of what we saw last game?
Yeah. How you describe that puck possession is an important thing. We don't want to be bringing the puck back 5 times in our end or in the neutral zone. There's just too much danger in doing that. But we do have a number of men up front that can control the puck in the offensive zone. When you think of the pictures you have in your head about the Scheifele, Wheeler, and Kyle Connor line at times, their cutbacks, their ability to Mark's one of the best in the league at it. If you can get the puck below the goal line, it's very difficult to get it off him and play in that game. And so that's rule number 1 against a team as dynamic as Edmonton with the players they have is the less time they have the puck, the whole lot better you are. So we don't want to be throwing pucks away. At the same time, we don't want to play a perimeter game. So you can possess the puck on the outside all day long for the most part. But if you don't have net traffic and you don't put the puck to the net, you're not going to generate nearly as much as you need. So there is a fine line there, but we feel we can hang on to the puck a little bit more than we did in the past and maybe the last game, and not get into that transition game, right? Any lateral passes that aren't clean means they're going the other way and they're going fast. We have a whole lot of odd man rushes that were partial breaks, and we weren't even really necessarily out of position on those plays. They got going so fast you couldn't catch them. So we need to hang on to those pucks. And if we're going to turn the thing over, or we're going to give up possession, we want to be on the right side of it.
Just a couple more. We'll go next to Murat Tatesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Hi, Paul. There were a couple of questions about Mason Appleton earlier, and there's just a memory, a vision from training camp where after practice from day one, it seemed like he stapled himself to Adam Lowry. They were working on puck possession. They were picking pucks off the wall, shooting, all that sort of stuff. I mean, just in terms of trying to impress you, the opportunity was there. There was a job available. Yeah. Is that a guy just asserting himself and claiming it? What does that mean?
I think when you look at his year-over-year situation here and the style of game that he came in and had success in the American Hockey League, there was a transfer, right? There was a change in style of game that he needed to go through to play in the National League. And he would get to it at the end of each year, which is a totally normal thing. Maybe not. There's some young guys that come in and they get out of the gate real strong and they just wear down. But Mason would actually get stronger over the course of the year. And he would get faster. And at the end of the year, really excited, and you kind of penciled him into your next lineup the next year. And then he had a couple of training camps where he was hard to find. Like he didn't have great camps. And then he went, was in another lineup or in the American League. And then he cued in on it. He became very aware of it, that his start had to look like his finish. So I would put him in the same boat that I think Logan Stanley, in some ways, that the longer pause actually helped him. It's because he came back to camp, and from day one, he looked like the player that finished the last season plus, right? And then some. So he gets into this camp, and what he finds early in this year that he'd never had before was a little bit of confidence. Like he felt good out there. He was stronger now. He was faster in the drills. He could get on the D. So he's starting to build confidence even in the practices that we're running. And clearly the coaches are looking at that going, boy, those two, we've always thought of Kopp and Lowry as a pair, but those two, there's something there. And Adam, Adam really, the speed that Mason's playing at really benefits Adam as well. So there's a great combination there. So I think he built a lot of confidence in camp, and he's been, what he's got now is a defined game. So if you come and ask me for the list of things of what Mason Appleton is, I think they're the exact same list that he would have. And at the end of the day, very probably the most important thing that happens to a player is that he and the coach agree on what he's good at. And I think Mason and I would agree on what he's good at now.
We'll go next. Final question to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul. One thing that stood out to me with Mason was when he hadn't scored yet in the season, he came out and we were asking him about it. He was very confidently, very assuredly said it was going to come. And sure enough, in that night, when did you kind of see him arrive on that confidence as a player to, be able to realize the process is the important thing and it's going to get you to where you want to go?
I think if you kind of go back to the earlier answer, when a player hits the ice and he's got a list of 3 or 4 things that he expects out of himself that night, and those things are there. And again, you agree with the coach that those 3 things are there and they're really important to the hockey team for us to win. he knows he's not coming out. He knows that I'm not looking at his stats and his goals and assists to decide whether he was a valuable player for the Winnipeg Jets. So you never lose your confidence, right? If you're a shooter and you're not scoring and there's not much else to your game, you lose your confidence real fast when the puck's not going in. But when you're killing penalties and you're playing against the other team's best and getting a lot of action around the net, you know the coach is real happy with you. You're real comfortable with your game. Your confidence is high and it stays high. So you know that the puck's going to go in for him. But if he doesn't score in here tonight, he can still have a great impact on the game, offensive zone time, shutting the other team down, killing penalties. He can have just as big an impact without scoring a goal on the Winnipeg Jets' success.